Alright, Shalom, Shalom. I want to give all praise to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, double honors to the Apostle, Bahashim, Bahashim, Rakah, HaKadash, double honors to the apostles. Let me read them. I give all praise to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rakah, HaKadash, double honors to the apostles and the elders. Double honors to the apostles. That was a great millstone. Doing well. Citations to the argument they're spreading this truth like wildfire. Shalom to Shalom to spreading this truth like wildfire. Sincerely, Shalom to the Israelite foreigners, who are like other nations, but the Spirit bears witness. Shalom to the hopeful elect among the Israelite foreigners. The Spirit bears witness that they're the children of Yahweh by Shinn outside. And Shalom to the real sisters out there. Alright, I want to do a video on the second part of this dude's dream. This so-called Christian who, I simply believe is in the speckled bird, man, just because of that zeal he's showing. That zeal, but not according to knowledge. Also, I'm gonna pause this because he's going off. But I'm gonna basically the dream is already finished. It's that part now. But I'm gonna post it on here and so y'all can see for yourselves. And hey, man, that dream, he didn't know what it meant, but that dream, with them fire clouds and shit, and that beast whose skin looked like a cloud, all that, horns of a bull and all that. That dream lines up with the prophecy in the book of Second Ezra's. About it's known as World War III. About the last war, the battle of Armageddon. It actually fits the it actually fits these scriptures, man. And of course he wouldn't know, being a so-called Christian. So it's up to the Hakim to bring it out. And let me get hold on. Let me get into it. Second Ezra's chapter 15 and 28. Behold, in a horrible vision, and the appearance thereof from the east. Verse 29. When the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon earth, that they which hear them may fear and tremble. Ishmael, right? Verse 30. Also the Iranians, raging in wrath, shall go forward as the wild boars of the wood. Hold on. And with great power shall they come and join battle with them, and shall waste the portion of the land of the Assyrians. Verse 31, and then shall the dragons have the upper hand, remembering their nature, and they shall turn themselves, conspiring together in great power to persecute them. Verse 32, then these shall be troubled, bled, and kept silence through her power, and shall flee. God. Verse 33, and from the land of the Assyrians shall the enemy besiege them, and consume some of them, and in their host shall be fear and dread, and strife among their kings. And basically, it's symbolic, not really speaking of the ancient Assyrians, but how America is likened unto Babylon, and America's Babylon the Great, and it's also spiritually Assyria as well, oppressing both the southern and northern kingdoms. Just read the book of Nahum about Nineveh, chapter 2. Woe unto the bloody city, right? This is modern day Nineveh. The prey departed not, Let me get Nahum chapter 3, actually, and 1. Woe to the bloody city. It is full of lies and robbery. The prey departed not. Yeah, it sounds like this place too. Verse 2, the noise of a whip, and the noise of the rattling of the wheels, and of the prancing horses, and of the jumping chariots. Verse 3, the horsemen lift up both a bright sword and a glittering spear, and there's a multitude of slain, and a great number of carcasses, and there's none end of their corpses. They stumble upon their corpses, a land full of death. And that's meant both physically and spiritually. This is hell the great, right? Verse 4, because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot, the mistress of witchcrafts that selleth nations through her whoredoms, and families through her witchcrafts, and that's fucking Babylon the Great. Which is also spiritually Assyria. So, that's where I get that from. I'm gonna get into, I'm just reading this one out. Verse 5, behold, I'm against thee, say the owl hosts. I'll discover thy skirts on thy face. You get the picture, okay? Same place as Babylon the Great. It's also referred to as Nineveh or spiritually Nineveh or Assyria. Let me get into, hold on, I can. Behold, clouds from the east and from the north into the south, and they're very horrible to look upon, full of wrath and storm. Verse 35, They shall smite one upon another, and they shall smite down a great multitude of stars upon the earth, even their own star, and blood shall be from the sword unto the belly. Verse 36, and dung of men unto the camel's hoe, whatever. Verse 37, and there shall be great fearfulness and trembling upon earth, and they that see the wrath. Hold on, let me look up what camel hoe is. That's hoe means heel. Oh, the lower part of the thigh, the lower part of a thigh, the joint of the hind leg of a beast. That's what that means. So you get the picture, it's going to be, it would be all the way back to the, basically to the, unto the camel's hole, into basically the back of their knee. Verse 37, and there shall be great fearfulness and trembling upon earth, and they that see the wrath shall be afraid, and trembling shall come upon them. Verse 38, and then shall come great storms from the south and from the north, and another part from the west. It's gonna be so bad. They're gonna be people are gonna be passing out from fear, man. Dying of fear and shit. Verse 39, and strong winds shall rise from the east, and shall open it in the cloud which he raised up in wrath, and the stars stirred to cause fear toward the east, and west wind shall be destroyed. And that star is speaking of the nukes. Yeah, because it says they shall cast down stars, great multitude of stars upon the earth, even their own star. Yep. So blood shall be from the sword unto the belly. Yep. That's how stars is talking about that, about nukes. In this chapter. The great verse 40 though, the great and mighty cloud shall be puffed up full of wrath on the star, that they may make all the earth afraid, and them that dwell therein, and they shall pour over every high and eminent place a horrible star. Verse 41, fire and hail and flying swords. Not literally meaning flying swords, but hey, these missiles, man, that all fields and many waters, that all fields may be full. They're using symbolic language here, and all rivers with the abundance of great waters. So much missiles, man. Verse 42, and they shall break down the cities and walls, mountains and hills, trees of the wood, grass of the meadows, and the corn. Verse 43, and they shall go steadfastly unto Babylon, and make her afraid. Verse 44, they shall come to her and besiege her. The star and all wrath shall they pour out upon her. Then shall the dust and smoke go up into the heaven, and they that be about her shall bewail her. It's talking about the destruction of Babylon. Yeah. Verse 45, and they that remain under her shall do service unto them that have put her in fear. Yep. Babylon is going to be destroyed. It's talking about that. That World War III storm clouds is going to end up all basically, they're going to be gathered. Well, they're being gathered, and eventually, they're going to they're going to they're going to go make their trip. They're going to make their way to Babylon. The shit that's happening out there is going to affect Babylon. It's actually going to destroy Babylon. AKA America. Yeah, that was what that dream was about. Even though you may, for the dude that had this dream and posted it, and Darren Shinn, that's what you actually saw. Them nukes, man. And nukes can also have that effect. You can have, you got something called mushroom clouds, man. And then that much nukes that are gonna fall would produce hella mushroom clouds, man. So much it would darken the sky that much. And let me get to trying to find that little live page I have. There's other scriptures to bring out on this as well. Like, shit, hold on. There's other hey, bring out a verse to show you, basically give you the idea of how much nukes is going to hit this place. Nahum 1:7, Yahweh is good, a stronghold in the day of trouble. He knoweth them that trust in him. Verse 8, but with the overrunning flood, he will make an utter end of the place thereof, and darkness shall pursue his enemies. Yep. Verse 9, what ye imagine against Yahweh. These devils plot against their people and against the Most High Yahweh. He will make an utter end. Affliction shall not rise up the second time. Hold on again. Verse 10, for while they are full in together as thorns, and while they are drunken as drunkards, they shall be devoured as stubble, fully dry. Fire burns straight through stubble. Let me bring out Babylon. Yeah, about them nukes, about them basically the 200 million nukes. If you look into it, the horsemen, those actually nukes. Let me get this one first. Revelation 6 and 7, verse 12. And I beheld, when he had opened the sixth seal, the sun became black as sackcloth of hair. Maybe I should read this out. Verse 7, when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, actually, hold on. Verse 12, and I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. Verse 13, and the stars of heaven fell upon the earth. even as the fig tree casteth her untimely figs, when she is shaken of a mighty wind. Verse 14, and the heavens departed as a scroll, when it is rolled together, and every mountain island were moved out of their places. Verse 15. So you see the verse 15. Oh, so you see the connection. You know how nukes is also called stars too. Verse 15. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man hid themselves in the dens and the rocks and the mountains. Verse 16. And said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. Verse 17, for the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Yeah. And let me get, you could see what it means, you know. You could see, you know, the nukes, the nuclear war, you know, being spoken of, the Third World War. That's going to end the Babylon being destroyed. And let me get, let me get, all right, verse 7 of Revelation chapter 8. And let me get Revelation 9 and 12, showing you it's about World War III. One woe was past, and behold, there come two woes more hereafter. Verse 13, and the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before power Yahweh. Verse 14, saying to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, loose the 4 angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And by the way, hold on. Verse 15, and the 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year for to slay the third part of men. Verse 16, and the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000, 200 million, in other words. And I heard the number of them. Verse 17, thus I saw the horses in a vision, and them that sat on them having breastplates of fire, and adjacent and brimstone, and the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. You know, and this is John the Revelator describing what he saw in terms that he knew during his time. You look at a nuclear warhead, man, and it looks just like that. Looks just like that description, man. Having breastplates of fire and jacinth and brimstone, yep. And the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions. Yep, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoking. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. You see, they do look like that, man. You know, the nuclear warheads look just like that. Verse 18, by these 3 were the third part of men killed, by the fire and by the smoke and by the brimstone, which it issued out of their mouths. Verse 19, for their power is in their mouth and in their tails, for their tails were like unto serpents, and had heads, and with them they do hurt, yo. In their mouth and in their tails, man. You know, their tails was like on the serpents, man. Let me see look at a path that a nuclear missile makes in the world in the sky. Looks like a serpent. I had heads, and with them they do hurt. Warheads. Yep. Yep, for their tails were like on the serpents and had heads, and with them they do hurt. They are, man. Fits the description, man. So that is speaking of the nuclear war that's coming, and these nukes is gonna hit Babylon, man. It's gonna spread to Babylon, which is America. Like that chapter verses in Second Ezra chapter 15 went into. Let me get let me get this one right here. Because basically, all these conflicts at Babylon, America has been starting all over the world. It's gonna come back to bite it in the ass, man. And you have let me get the scriptures that I think fit this. I might get. Revelation 16 and 12. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. Verse 13. And I saw three unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. Verse 14. For they are the spirits of devils, demons, right? Demonios, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of power almighty. Yep. So this is talked about before. Keep that in mind. Verse 15, behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked and see his shame. Verse 16, and he gathered them together unto a place in the Hebrew, called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon, which is really Harmageddon in the Paleo Hebrew. Verse 17, which is the true and original Hebrew, by the way. Verse 17, and the seventh angel poured out his vial into the air. It's important to know the true Hebrew. But yeah, know that that's the true Hebrew as well. That the shit being spoken in the Middle East by those 1948ers, man, they don't line up with the true Hebrew. They don't have the Hebrew either, and somehow they're in the land. You have to consider that. They don't fit none of the prophecies, and they don't have the Hebrew. They don't really follow the laws. They're still in the land. They're on top. Yeah, something doesn't add up. Which is also, this is also how they're going to be cleansed out of our land. And it's going to be made ready for us. But yeah, and the seventh angel poured out his vial into the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne saying, it is done. Verse 18, and there were voices and thunders and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great. And you have to think, verse 19, nuclear bombs, that amount of nuclear bombs flying around the world, with that amount of nuclear explosions, especially a lot of them hitting one location like that, one landmass like that, you have to think it would cause a great earthquake. All the tectonic plates is hitting, and that impact with that amount of force, right? All the super volcanoes that's getting hit. There's 4 known ones, but there's probably even more of them. Super volcanoes, and they're like giant pimples on the face of planet Earth. They're gonna they're like more like blisters, more like boils, and they're gonna fucking pop. Boom! They're gonna pop. So you have the magma as well. You have to think, in those terms, and also how a lake of fire would be created. You have to think, all the nukes hitting one place like that, 200 million. That would create a lake of fire. Crazy plagues, man. Crazy worms threaten America's trees and gas or maple syrup. You have more signs like this showing you that World War III is near, and which means Yahushai, whom the world ignorantly called JC, who the world ignorantly believes is a so-called white man with long hair and blue eyes, either brown or blonde, like brown or blonde, and basically a beard and all that. He's a so-called black man with woolly hair like wool. In Revelation chapter 1, 14 and 15, 13 to 15. He's a so-called black man. They show him with a straight beard and straight hair and all that. Not woolly. Blonde or black haired, pale. That's not how he looked. Burnt brass does not look pale. Revelation 1, 13 to 15 tells you all about it, among other verses. Among other verses. In Daniel, for example. Revelation 1, 13. In the midst of several, you could do it, man. Revelation 1, 13. In the midst, I'm bringing it out since I brought it up. And in the midst of 7 candlesticks, one like unto the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girt about the paps with a golden girdle. Verse 14, his head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow. Head, the hairs on his head, he had a full head of hair. You have the saying. And nobody's skin is actually white. That's a falsehood. That has been taught to our people. It's been taught to all the nations. As well as Jacob, that people actually have white skin or black skin. It's false. And white as snow, so it must be referring to something else. And his eyes were as a flame of fire. So his head and his hairs, okay, so the hairs on his face, his beard, his mustache, his eyelashes, his eyebrows were white like wool, white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire. And he's described to have hair like wool in Daniel. Wool was used twice. Keep that in mind. Verse 15, and his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace, and his voice is the sound of many waters. Deep. And so yeah, I had to address that because that's who's coming back. He is when Yahweh Shai comes back, that's what you're gonna see. You're gonna see a tall, angry, so-called black man come down from a so-called UFO, a huge one, and having many with him, because those are the chariots of the Most High Yahweh. Hey, it was 41 minutes, 44 seconds, so when 44 there. Most High Yahweh will show signs. They doing the right thing. Kala Yahweh Hashem Yahushai B'Hashem Kaha Kadash for those signs. And yeah, coming back as an angry so-called black man from a so-called UFO with a bunch of other angry so-called black men. Angry about so-called black men, you know, with bloodshot eyes. That's what that refers to. The eyes being the flame of fire, like a flame of fire. Ugh. Well, hold on, let me get back on it. Verse 19, and the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon came in remembrance before power Yahweh to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. Verse 20, yep, great Babylon came in remembrance before power Yahweh. Ultimately, the nukes are going to be what takes Babylon out. Verse 20, and every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. Yo, the result of the earthquake. Verse 21, and there fell upon man a great hail out of heaven, every stone about the weight of a talent, and man blasphemed power Yahweh. And man blasphemed power Yahweh because of the plague of the hail, for the plague there was exceedingly great. And it's talking about, and no hail is that big, so we have to think, what is it really referring to? You know, where else is hail mentioned in that way? It's talked about in Second Esdras as well. You get another one. Revelation 17 and 4 and 12. And the 10 horns which thou sawest were 10 kings which received no kingdom as yet, during John's time, of course, who received power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Verse 13, these have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. Verse 14, these shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. They that are with them are called and chosen and faithful. I'm show you how I'm bringing this out. Verse 15, he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the horse sitteth are people, and multitudes and nations and tongues. Verse 16, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Verse 17, for power Yahweh had put it in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and to give their kingdom unto the beasts of the worlds of power shall be fulfilled. Verse 18, and the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. We're America, man. It's like one great city. And where does everybody live in America? The cities, the urban. The urban and the suburbs. So the cities, man. Most people are packed into cities. It shows you right there too. That fits it. Let me get alright, so let me get Revelation 18 and verse okay. Maybe I should hold on. Thinking which one to bring out. And after these things I saw another angel came down, verse 1, from heaven having great power too, and the earth was alight with his glory. Verse 2, he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon, the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Verse 3, for all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. Verse 4, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. Verse 5, for her sins have reached unto heaven, and power Yahweh had remembered her iniquities. Verse 6, reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works, and the cup which she had filled to her double. Verse 7, how much she had glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she said in her heart, I sit a queen and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Verse 8, therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is Yahweh power who judges her. Yep. Verse 9, and the kings of the earth, when who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her, shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning. Verse 10, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. Verse 11, and the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. Because Babylon is a consumer country, America is a consumer country, the number one consumer country, man. Babylon is the world's biggest consumer country, world's biggest consumer economy. It's fucking America. It's the United States. Yep. List of largest consumer markets. United States. Yep. United States at the top, then the EU. And China wants to be like Babylon. They're trying to overtake the US as the world's largest consumer market. So it's Babylon right now. Let me hold on. Get back to the point, right? You know, all this merchandise, man, that Babylon provided, man. Verse 12, the merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones, well, that Babylon bought. The yeah, all this you can read about it, 12, 13. You know, they was made rich by the city, man. That's why they're gonna mourn. But at the same time, they're gonna rejoice because Babylon was that hammer over the whole earth. You know, and they're free now. They're gonna be sad for a little while, but then they're gonna rejoice. You know, and we're actually supposed to look forward to this, you know, this event coming, because the elect are gonna be protected, man. The elect are actually gonna be supposed to hope to be at that number. You know, be the elect that get delivered. You know, just before them nukes hit, man. Just before, you know, because you know we are gonna go through. We are gonna go through tribulation, and we're gonna go through tribulation. But hey, so You believe in that rapture, right? When the rapture is not in the Bible, but the elect getting beamed up by the chariots is. The elect getting beamed up by the chariots. The Most High Yahweh make it as clouds as a chariot. That's in the Bible. And let me get that's our deliverance, man. He rideth upon clouds, a pillar of cloud, like the one that led our people out of Egypt. Pillar of cloud, who was also a pillar of fire. He cometh with clouds, man. Revelation 1:7, behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him, and all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him. Even so, Amen. It was really Amen, Hebrew. Taken up in the clouds, I'm gonna get that too. Well, 1 Thessalonians 4:17. That's what these so-called Christians think is the rapture, but it's really these so-called UFOs beaming up the elect. These identified flying objects, they are identified in the Bible, beaming up the elect before the nukes hit. 1 Thessalonians 4:17. Now we which are alive and remain shall be caught up in the clouds with them, caught together with them in the clouds to meet Yahushai in the air, and so shall we ever be with Yahushai. These are the clouds that spoken of. He maketh the clouds his chariot. Psalms 104 and 3. Who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters, who maketh the clouds his chariots, who walketh upon the wings of the wind. Telling you. Yep. Hey, pillar of cloud, pillar of fire. Psalms 104, verse 4. Who maketh his angels spirits, his ministers of flaming fire. And man, I'm gonna get into some. I'm just bring out. Went into this dream, so I'm going to just touching on that, and then that's it. Pillar of cloud and fire, man. It didn't represent nothing. It was one. It was actually, the chariot of the Most High Yahweh. Exodus 13:21. And Yahweh went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light to go by day and night. Yup, pillar of cloud and fire, man. It took not away the pillar of the cloud by day, nor the pillar of fire by night from before the people. Verse 22. It was led using chariots, man. Elijah was caught up one in one. It's speaking of the so-called UFOs. Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai was all together, and Yahweh came down upon Mount Sinai on the top of the mount, and Yahweh called Moses up to the top of the mount, and Moses went up. Mm-hmm. Hold on. Well, Khan, Exodus 19 and 16. I gotta wrap that part up now after this. And it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mount. There you go. And the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled. Khan. Verse 17. And Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with power Yahweh, and they stood at the nether part of the mount. Couldn't get close. Verse 18. And Mount Sinai was altogether on smoke, because Yahweh descended upon it with fire, and the smoke thereof extended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. Pillar of cloud, pillar of fire. And when the voice of the trumpet sounded long and waxed louder and louder, Moses spake, and power Yahweh answered him by a voice. Verse 20. And Yahweh came down upon Mount Sinai on the top of the mount, and Yahweh called Moses up to the top of the mount, and Moses went up. He Yo, hey, so yeah, the so-called UFO, a huge so-called UFO that was posted up on Mount Sinai. Let me get. So basically, the commandments were given to Moses from a so-called UFO. And Yahushai was beamed up. And basically, Yahushai was beamed up by a so-called UFO. Acts chapter 1. When he had spoken these things, while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. Yup. Verse 10. And while they looked steadfastly towards heaven, as he went up, behold, two men stood by them in white apparel. Verse 11, which also said, Ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven? The same Yahushua which is taken from you into heaven shall come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven. Yep, that's all there. It's all there, man. Alright, so anyways, okay, in your dream, you basically said that you had to protect all these people, and it could be a sign that you finna get this truth. That you're gonna get this truth. You be a part of the 1/3, and you're gonna be protecting, the other 1/3 that's in your household, man. It could be a sign. tired. Another red spirit. So there's different shit coming out. Revolution. Alright, so I'm back, Shalom. And hold on. Let me bring up this little article that I found. And hold on. Man, I got this article. Just gonna bring out a few news articles as well. Crazy worms threaten America's trees and gasp or maple syrup. This article from this morning. And goes like this. Earthworms are often seen as a welcome presence in gardens and even on fishing hooks. But in the Northeast, experts say invasive crazy worms from Asia are creating havoc in forests. And they say the unusual worms are a danger to animals and plants, and especially to sugar maple trees. Quote unquote, the street credit they have is hiding the invasion. Joseph Godes, a soil scientist at the University of Vermont, says of the worms, quote unquote, I call earthworm invasion socially correct, quote unquote. Godes tells NPR because folks think of earthworms as the good guys, and maybe they are in certain ecosystems, but in the context of the northern U.S. forests, they are relative newcomers that have the potential to have huge effects, quote unquote. Crazy worms, also known as jumper worms, reproduce rapidly. They love to tear through the nutritious layer of decomposing leaves or nutrients that blanket the forest floor, a habit that can be very damaging to forests, including maple trees. First things first, why do people call them crazy worms? What makes these worms so crazy? They're really active worms, and the craziness comes from that. They can jump out of your hand, Golders says, adding that the creatures in these breathing cannot launch them into the air. And they also lose their tails, he adds. Some other species can lose their tails just like salamander. So that's kind of crazy too when you see it, quote unquote. Uh, the worms don't regenerate a new tail. It's more like a single-use get-out-of-jail card. It's a one-time defense against a nasty bird that comes around to pick it up, go to its head, quote-unquote, it splits. The live part of the worm actually sort of slithers away, and the tail keeps thrashing about. So it's basically saying, here I am, you pick me up, I'm the worm, quote-unquote. They are very active, quote-unquote. Monica Turner, University of Wisconsin-Madison professor once told Wisconsin Public Radio. They almost seem like worms that want to be snakes. Crazy bad, not crazy good. Although some earthworms can be helpful to gardeners, they can also cause problems in forests. This is especially true for the Asian earthworms that are classified in the Amanthus genus. Worms are pretty much fools for everything. Unquote, Maine State Horticulturist Gary Fish recently told Maine Public Radio. The worms possess a slew of characteristics that make them a problem for forest managers and horticulturists. They're voracious eaters, while most earthworms delve deep into the soil. Crazy worms prefer to stay in the springy duff, quote unquote, layer, decomposing organic material. They, quote unquote, they eat the forest duff much faster than a lot of the other European worms because they stay right in that duff. They don't go deep into the ground. Fish said they stay right at that duff level and just eat it all up very fast, really fast, quote unquote. Plus, they alter the composition of the soil, creating a texture that's often compared to coffee grounds. The modified soil is ruined for many native plants and is stripped of vital ingredients, vital nutrients lacking, and prone to increased erosion. The worms can even cause challenges for casual gardeners. Homeowners may see garden plants killed, may have difficulty growing plants, quote unquote. Minnesota's Department of Natural Resources says. Now they show you the two images. These images showing two stands of sugar maple trees. The one on the left has not been invaded by Asian crazy worms, and the one on the right has. The Asian worms also have biological advantages. They can reproduce sexually through parthenogenesis, asexually through parthenogenesis, and because they mature into 60 days, two groups of offspring can hatch in a single season. A number of states, including Maine and New York, have banned crazy worms outright. Hold on. What about my syrup? Crazy worms' impact on maple syrup could be severe, quote unquote. Fish told main public radio. They tend to really impact maple trees, quote unquote, he said, particularly because those trees tend to have shallow roots, quote unquote, without that protective leaf litter and duff layer, they become very stressed and then more susceptible to insects and diseases, and they're less likely to grow very fast, quote unquote, he said. In Vermont, Gordon says that if the earth were to invade more forest areas across the border in Canada, there's going to be a lot less regeneration of maple trees, the sugar maple in particular. When, quote unquote, when the worms go through forest duff layer, they also take away a crucial germination medium for small plants. They usually supply food for deer. When those plants are abundant, Gordon says deers will start browsing on other things such as saplings of trees, including maples, quote unquote, delivering what he cautions as a speculative forecast. Gordon says that within the next 50 to 100 years, they think, man, this kingdom ain't gonna be around that long, man. But of course, they're gonna say that shit. They're gonna, of course, Esau think this kingdom gonna last forever, and on these 2/3 here do as well. But yeah, so they said there'll be less and less maple syrup, quote unquote. They've been crawling among us for decades. A crazy worm by any other day, it turns out, would cause just as many problems in the South. They're sometimes called the Alabama jumpers or Georgia jumpers, and they're often sold as a lively form of fish bait. In New Jersey, they're called Jersey wrigglers. Gora says they're also known as snake worms because of the vigorous way they move. The forests of the northeastern U.S. are especially vulnerable to crazy worms because of glaciation. When massive glaciers scoured the area with ice thousands of years ago, according to Esau, right? The area, like no other parts of the northern U.S., was left with no native earthworms. Yeah, according to Esau, it was thousands of years ago. And these devils don't know. Earthworms such as night crawlers came to the region later, arriving along with colonists from Europe. Then in the 1800s, a new type of worms arrived from Asia. But it wasn't until fairly recently that crazy worms were seen as becoming established, and Godes and other scientists say they seem to be spreading more now. The worms mainly spread within the U.S. through the domestic market, both through the horticulture industry and through the sales of fish bait. Crazy worms can be identified by a few unique qualities, starting with their behavior. They also have a milky white or gray clitellum, a band that many earthworms have that is flush with the rest of their body. Trying to tame crazy worms. When asked what can be done to stop or slow down the worm spread, Golden says he and his team are working on environmentally safe ideas such as using fungi or insecticidal soaps. Verse Salika, that was not no verse and spoke, but that, yeah, reading the Bible a lot, so you see where the confusion comes from. But he Salaka, y'all going through it. Let me get back into this article. But he adds it's difficult to find funding for projects to take down earthworm populations. Another consequence, he said, of their street cred. Quote unquote, who would fund research on killing the worms or figuring out how to get rid of them, he asks. As Wisconsin's Department of Natural Resources said, there is no magic bullet to control jumping worms, at least not yet, quote unquote. So this is another plague that's hitting Babylon. And this time it's going to affect the maple syrup industry. They about to have a shortage of famine on maple syrup, yo. And let me get Matthew 24:7. There's a sign of the end coming soon. Matthew 24:7. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. Verse 8, all these are the beginning of sorrows. All these are the beginning of sorrows, bitch. Okay, y'all got an interruption. Right, so that's a sign of things to come, the beginning of sorrows. You know, a sign that the end is near, man. That's gonna drive up. That's gonna be a famine. It's gonna be a famine of maple syrup. That's gonna drive up. That's gonna drive up prices of that as well. You know, so yeah, more famines. Let me get. I got another article from talking about another respiratory illness is spreading across the South. CDC warns what is RSV. The Center for Health Control and Prevention has issued a health advisory amid a spike in RSV, the respiratory illness across several southern states. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention is warning about RSV, a cold-like respiratory illness, amid a spike in cases across the southern U.S. The Public Health Agency issued an official advisory Thursday urging clinicians and caregivers to be on the lookout for the virus, which is known to attack the lungs and airwaves. Experts say they've seen an uptick in positive infections in at least a dozen states, including Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Texas, Kentucky, North Carolina, and South Carolina. Yeah. I've been sick as fuck. It could be that. Quote unquote. Due to this increased activity, CDC encourages broader testing for RSV among patients presenting with acute respiratory illness who test negative for SARS. Uh, shit. Yeah, you already know. See, yeah, SARS CoV. The virus that causes Crohn Royal in 1984. Addition advisory states, quote unquote, RSV can be associated with severe disease in young children and other adults. Cases of the virus typically peak during the fall and winter, the CDC said, resulting in around 58,000 hospitalizations in the U.S. each year. Infants and children are at the highest risk are at highest risk of severe illness due to RSV, as are older adults who have underlying medical conditions, according to the agency. Here's what to know and how to protect yourself and your family. What is RSV? RSV, or respiratory syncytial whatever illness virus, is a respiratory illness typically spread through airborne droplets when someone sneezes or coughs, according to the CDC. You can also catch it through direct contact with a contaminated surface. It's the most common cause of bronchiolitis. Bronchiolitis, that a common lung infection in young children and infants. And pneumonia infections in kids younger than 1. Signs and symptoms of RSV. RSV usually presents like a cold with symptoms including a cough, headache, runny nose, and fever. The virus can cause flushiness or irritability, loss of appetite, and lethargy before more common symptoms like a cough, sneezing appear. In younger patients, especially infants, the virus can cause fussiness or irritability, loss of appetite, and lethargy. More common symptoms like a cough or sneezing appear. While there is no specific treatment for RSV, public health experts say people usually recover in 1 to 2 weeks. Others can become very ill, however. Each year, 177,000 adults over 65 have got to be hospitalized. An estimated 14,000 died due to RSV infection, according to CDC data. Can you be tested for RSV? Testing typically isn't required to diagnose a positive RSV infection, according to the American Lung Association. However, doctors can run a blood test or take a mouth swab to confirm. Notice that they're taking the swab from the mouth and not the nose. Additional testing may be needed in more serious cases, experts say, and include a chest X-ray or a CT scan. Is there a vaccine? There a jab for RSV? I already talking about that. No. Plans to develop a jab and the antivirals that are effective against RSV are still in the works. The CDC says in 2019, early trials of an experimental RSV jab showed promising results by triggering large increases in RSV neutralizing antibodies. Are sustained for several months, according to the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. A jab to prevent RSV is a long-sought goal that has eluded us for decades. Now they're probably gonna push that shit, man. Now we need a jab for this. Pushing the jab agenda more. A vaccine agenda. Mandatory jab. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases Dr. Anthony Fauci. Same devil. That's behind this. That's behind the Crown Royal 1984 edition scare. Said at the time, the early results, ain't that some shit? It's almost like he's the mastermind of all this shit. But yeah, keep that in mind. The early results of this trial suggest that this structure-based strategy for developing an RSV vaccine, jab, or vaccine may bring that goal within reach. So how to prevent? So they're pushing jabs more, man. How to prevent RSV spread? To slow the spread of RSV, the CDC recommends frequent hand washing, wiping down high-touch surfaces, covering your mouth when you cough or sneeze, avoiding touching your face, and limiting contact with others who may be sick. So, they talk about another pestilence. Some of these is gonna be real, not hyped up. But they could hype this one up to make it look like more people have it, Be like the pandemic part 2, just to push the jab, and this is the MO of these devils, man. They're extremely, these self-proclaimed so-called white people. When I talk about the self-proclaimed so-called white people, I'm talking about Edomites, or the so-called white man. I talk about the so-called white man, I'm talking about Edomites. I'm not talking about speckled birds. you so-called white people that really go back to so-called black people, Latinos, or natives, and that's why you catch the same curses of Deuteronomy chapter 28. You're at the bottom with so-called black people, Latinos, and natives. And you have the zeal. You have the zeal, and y'all got salt, a flavor, soul, etc. You basically so-called black people, Latinos, or natives stuck in the so-called white man body. Not talking about y'all when I say so-called white people or the so-called white man or the self-proclaimed so-called white man, etc. I'm not talking about y'all. The brothers are not talking about y'all. Me and like-minded Akim are talking about me and like-minded Akim from GMS, Man of Valor. Anyone that pushes the same doctrine as us, we're not talking about y'all. We're talking about actual Edomites and not Edomite lookalikes. And it's 644, meaning it's 144 somewhere. Kahala, Kahalayim, La Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahweh Shai Ba'Hashem Rakaha Kadash. Signs that we doing the right thing. The Most High Yahweh will show them to you. Let me get that's more pestilences, right? Or signs of the end. And she's being used to push the jab agenda, the Maxine Waters agenda, and I ain't talking about that senator. this article right here, man. Article right here. Basically, there was a shooting in Austin, like having like last morning. Police in Austin, Texas, searching for suspects following a mass shooting in the city's downtown area on early Saturday morning that left 13 people injured, with 2 victims in critical condition. No fatalities have been reported. It is not yet known whether there is one or multiple suspects, and no suspect has yet been identified. Well, however, the APD is seeking a man who may have been involved and have appealed for public help in finding the perpetrators. The shooting began at is not known whether it's not one or multiple suspects, and no suspects have been identified yet. They're saying that they're seeking a man who may have been involved. So a suspect, and have an appeal for public health and finding the perpetrators. You already see Esau trying to. It might be another staged false flag. The shooting began at 1:30 a.m. in the 400 block of East 6th Street, popular area for entertainment where many restaurants and bars are located. Police said the crowd was almost at pre-pandemic levels, meaning potentially tens of thousands of people were in the area centered around 6th Street, according to the Austin American-Statesman, the local newspaper. An APD statement on Thursday said there were a total of 13 victims who sustained gunshot wounds and were injured. 11 victims are in stable condition. 2 victims are in critical condition. At the time, no facilities have been reported. "Quote unquote, the suspect remains at large," APD said. "Quote unquote, it is unknown if there is one or multiple suspects involved. There is one skinny suspect described as a so-called black male with dreadlocks, wearing actual black shirt and a skinny build. The area will be closed for an extended amount of time to process the crime scene. Investigators are collecting and reviewing camera footage and surveillance video. The shooting incident was first reported early on Saturday by Austin Travis County EMS on their Twitter account and later confirmed by police. Interim Austin Police Chief Joseph Chacon held a press conference at 4 a.m. to provide some information about the event. "Quote unquote, it was very difficult to contain the scene. It was very difficult for EMS to make their way into the crowd," Chacon said. "Quote unquote, and because of the nature of the injuries, officers had to go ahead and use police vehicles to put some of their shooting vehicles into their vehicles and victims into their vehicles, slacking and transporting them themselves." You notice this year the shootings have basically gone out of control and shit. And of course, they're going to involve the crisis actors as well. Not saying that this individual is, but they can involve them in these types of events. One eyewitness, 26-year-old Taylor Blount, told the Austin American-Statesman he was in a bar on 6th Street when he heard the gunshots. "Quote unquote, I only heard them from a single weapon, and everyone started running in different directions," Blount said. "Quote unquote, people were freaking out a lot, and there were some people crying, but most people were just freaking out," quote unquote. Blount told the newspaper he ran into a nearby bar and locked the door behind him because he didn't know exactly where the shots was coming from. He went back into the street moments later when he thought it was safe and saw cops dragging the man to safety, and then he had him performing first aid The man had reportedly been shot in the ribs. "Quote unquote, it was very intense," he said. APD has stressed that the information currently available is preliminary and that they have appealed for help from the public. The motive for the shooting is not clear at that time. "Quote unquote, at this time," quote unquote, detectives are asking anyone with information or video of the incident to call APD Aggressive Assault Unit at 512-974 tips. Hold on. So, utilize the Crime Stoppers tip line at 512. Yeah, basically snitch. Yeah. What they're doing is like, it's like how you had these attacks, like reminds me of the Boston Marathon bombing. They would put out basically they would put out a notice. Oh, if you see these people, call the cops. It's not clear, quote unquote, it's not clear at the point which sparked this off. Detectives of the aggravated assault, homicide, organized crime, and gang units are involved in the investigation, according to CNN, because it's so-called a Jake. I mean, it's a Jake, right? So-called black man. Say one of them was a so-called black man, so of course, according to CNN and the FBI, Joint Terrorism Task Force team was also called in. Because now the so-called black people, Latinos and Native Americans, mainly, as well as Israelite foreigners that be like into the speckled bird, y'all are the new terrorists now. Esau is demonizing y'all. Quote unquote, it's not clear at this point what sparked this off, but out of an abundance of caution, we have notified the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, Chacon said. Newsweek has asked the APD for comment. All right, so now you have this event, this Austin mass shooting. Now you have that event. Watch for developments on that. Because it might be used to push an agenda. Zoom.